Jazakallah Mama. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala sayyidina wa nabiyyina wa habibina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa barak wa sallam. نويت التعلم والتعليم والتذكر والتذكير والنفع والانتفاع والإفادة والاستفادة والحث على التمسك بكتاب الله عز وجل وسنة رسوله والدعاء إلى الهدى والدلالة على الخير ابتغاء وجه الله ومرضاته وقربه وثوابه سبحانه وتعالى وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وبارك وسلم. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to all our dear respected listeners and viewers around the world. Alhamdulillah, once again it's truly a beautiful, great blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He has accepted us to enter into the seerah of His beloved Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam once again. And like we said yesterday, that in our time maybe this is the closest we can get to actually being there. If you couldn't physically live it through it, then maybe inshallah through these words we can live through and be in the companionship of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And that is one of what seerah really is in an essence. It's a form of being having the companionship of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in our lives. Yesterday, a quick recap. We on our daily seerah show we discussed the details of surrounding Makkah and the situation of Makkah at that time when the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam's father rather was in his teenage years, and the situation that had surrounded Makkah, how Makkah was. We discussed the jahiliyyah and the extent of it that had surrounded Makkah, and we discussed how the grandfather of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Abdul Muttalib, had come from Yathrib into Makkah and became the new leader of Makkah, and how he had seen the evils that had surrounded Makkah and what situation Makkah was in. But knowing that he couldn't change it overnight, Abdul Muttalib had made a dua. He used to try his best to make slow gradual changes and develop a change in this society that had become so cemented in jahiliyyah and so cemented in shirk and greed and dishonesty. So he began to do whatever he could during the day, and he would withdraw for himself from Makkah into a mountain in the cave of Hira, and he would make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that this is your pure city, please purify it. Please purify it of this shirk and this evil that has come into and crept into the city. And as a result of this dua, through his marriage with Fatima ibn Amr al-Makhzumi, Hazrat Abdul Muttalib and Fatima ibn Amr al-Makhzumi, they gave birth to the son Abdullah, who in turn married Amina bint Wahab. So Abdullah and Amina bint Wahab, from the lineage of Ismail alayhi salam, became the parents of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And we discussed their marriage. We discussed the moment when Hazrat Abdullah, who was in this full society of greed and jahiliyyah, and even his own brothers, some of them had taken on an honest role in their father's work of helping the society and being leaders of the society and being part of the council, and others were enjoying the pomp and the glory and had been sunk into the jahiliyyah. But yet Hazrat Abdullah was very different, and he was very detached from these worldly aspects and from the jahiliyyah. He was rather down on his knees, working hard and just being a teenager, an honest, normal teenager. And at that time we discussed that when he was about 17, 18 years old, he had married the mother of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Amina radiallahu anha. And just during that period of this same time, he was met by a woman by the name of Fatima bint Nawfal, who had actually proposed to Hazrat Abdullah. And at that time Hazrat Abdullah had declined, but when he went back to her later on, after he'd become a family man and now he was thinking about marriage, he went back to her. And at that time she said that the reason I was so captivated by you was because of that beautiful nur, that beautiful light that had emanated from your face. But now I don't see that anymore. And we discussed how after that, when Hazrat Abdullah had gone back home, he had been given the good news, the glad tidings from his wife Hazrat Amina, that the glad tidings she had given to all of the family of Abdul Muttalib, that she was pregnant with a child. And it was that nur of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that had manifested from Adam alayhi salam all the way down to Ibrahim alayhi salam, to Ismail alayhi salam, and down the lineage through Abdul Muttalib, through Abdullah, and now that new nur, as it transferred from the blessed person to person, had become completely illumined in the face of Hazrat Abdullah, and now it has been transferred into the womb of Hazrat Amina radiallahu anha. That was the part that we ended on yesterday, and from that inshallah we will continue today's seerah. As the custom, as is the practice, inshallah, before we begin, I request everyone to recite salawat upon the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad kama sallaita ala Ibrahim wa ala ali Ibrahim innaka Hamidum Majid. Allahumma barik ala Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad kama barakta ala Ibrahim wa ala ali Ibrahim innaka Hamidum Majid. So as the clouds disperse and we zoom down into this beautiful city of Makkah that has been tainted, we have this Kaaba that is surrounded in the center with 360 idols. We have the Darul Nadwa Council. We have the seat of the throne of Abdul Muttalib and the seats of those leaders of Quraysh around him. We have the rich and the poor, the rich influential homes. We have the poor slums, and we have the mountains that surround this city of Makkah. And whilst we're in this city, we know that we can go not too distant from the Haram, and we come to this beautiful house that is known as the house of Ibn Yusuf, the house where the Prophet ﷺ's mother Hazrat Amina radiallahu anha is situated, and the family, the father of the Prophet ﷺ is situated, and they've just been given this beautiful news that Hazrat Amina radiallahu anha is pregnant. She's expecting a child, which will be the son of Abdullah radiallahu anhu, and the grandson of Abdul Muttalib. And Abdul Muttalib knew from this very, very moment that there was something special. He felt a very strong happiness and a very strong love towards this grandson of his that was going to be born, InshaAllah. And at this time, now as time progresses, as Abdullah, he's going to be a father. He's in the happiness that I'm going to have a son. He's getting, as we discussed, he's just transitioned from being a hard-working teenager into a family man. He's got his own home, his own family now. And now the next step for Hazrat Abdullah radiallahu anhu is that he becomes the person who now starts to trade and starts to take an interest in business and the work of his father also, in terms of the business and the trade of his father. And during this time, Hazrat Abdullah radiallahu anhu and Hazrat Amina radiallahu anhu, they say goodbye to each other as Hazrat Abdullah radiallahu anhu, he begins to embark on a trade journey. He begins to leave Makkah on a journey to take items from Makkah and sell them outside of Makkah, and to buy items from outside of Makkah and sell them in Makkah. So he bids farewell to Hazrat Amina radiallahu anha, his beautiful, pure, beloved wife, the mother of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he bids farewell to his son Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the womb of his beautiful, pure wife Amina radiallahu anha. And he sets out on this journey, and he goes towards Yemen and towards Palestine and towards many different places in this pursuit of seeking halal rizq and halal income for his family and for his new child that is about to enter this world soon. And at this moment, Hazrat Amina radiallahu anha has just, she's just newly married. She's just only 2 months pregnant, and she said goodbye to her husband. She's living on her own in this house that we mentioned, that's not so far away from the Haram. And during this period, while she is in Makkah, Abdul Muttalib takes great care of her and orders that great care be taken of this daughter-in-law of his that was very, very beloved to him. And whilst there in Makkah, Hazrat Abdullah is working very, very hard, traveling from place to place, selling as many items as he could. And eventually his travel comes to an end. MashaAllah, he's completed his trade journey, and he's on his way back to come back to Makkah, and he can't wait. He's elated. He's waiting to come back to Makkah, to his beloved wife and to his beloved child that he is anticipating so eagerly. And he travels back from Palestine to Yemen, onwards towards Arabia, onwards towards on the route to Makkah, until he reaches a place in Yathrib. And he stops by in his city of Yathrib, where his father Abdul Muttalib was originally from. And he stays a few days at the family of Banu Najjar, his family relatives, because he was feeling very, very ill. And whilst he is on this journey, he makes this stop, and he stays over at the house of Banu Najjar, where his family members reside, due to this illness that takes over him. Meanwhile, in Makkah, his wife and his father Abdul Muttalib are now anticipating him, that my husband, my son, is returning soon. He's been gone so many weeks, so many months. He's going to be returning soon. And whilst Hazrat Amina radiallahu anha is in the 2nd month of pregnancy, Hazrat Abdullah radiallahu anhu, who starts to become very, very ill in Yathrib, become very, very ill in the house of Bani Najjar. And slowly, this illness increases and increases until Hazrat Abdullah radiallahu anhu breathes his last and he leaves this world. He passes away in that house of Bani Najjar in the city of Yathrib. Whilst the Prophet ﷺ is only 2 months old in the womb of his mother. Whilst Hazrat Amina radiallahu anha is only 2 months pregnant. At the age of 18, the father of the Prophet ﷺ passes away and he leaves this temporal world. And the Prophet ﷺ becomes an orphan even before he enters this world. And Hazrat Amina radiallahu anha and the grandfather of the Prophet ﷺ aren't even aware at this moment. They are in Makkah awaiting this beloved son, this beloved husband, anticipating, waiting for him to come back. And whilst they're waiting, Hazrat Amina radiallahu anha waits in her home, Hazrat Abdul Muttalib waits in his house, and what they are waiting is the arrival of Abdullah radiallahu anhu. But rather, what they're waiting for doesn't arrive. What arrives is a message telling them that the one you are waiting has passed away. Hazrat Abdullah radiallahu anhu has passed away. And this sets a great pain on the heart of the mother of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that her beloved husband, who she'd barely been married for 2-3 months, has just passed away. And for Hazrat Abdul Muttalib, that his most beloved youngest son, Abdullah radiallahu anhu, has just passed away. And to what extent Hazrat Abdul Muttalib went not to lose this son of his, and how beloved he was. Because as Abdullah radiallahu anhu, before this moment, before his marriage, in his young age, a moment came when he was about to be sacrificed. An oath was taken by Abdul Muttalib by virtue of which he would have had to sacrifice as Abdullah radiallahu anhu, the way Ismail alayhi salam was about to be sacrificed by Ibrahim alayhi salam. And eventually, a loophole, a way out was given to him by which he would have to cast lots, and eventually for every lot that he loses he would have to give 10 camels or 100 camels, and he continued doing this until he had to give a great fortune of camels just to save this beloved son of his. That's why the Prophet ﷺ said, Ana ibn Dhabihain, I am the son of the 2 slaughtered ones. Ismail alayhi salam and Abdullah, my father, was also almost about to be slaughtered, or about to be sacrificed. And this was the nature of the love that Hazrat Abdul Muttalib had for the grandfather of the for the father of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his youngest son at the time, Hazrat Abdullah radiallahu anhu. And Hazrat Abdullah radiallahu anhu was one that was as beloved as he was. Now he's just been, the news has come that he has passed away. This absolutely beloved son of Makkah and this beloved son of Abdul Muttalib has passed away. And Hazrat Amina begins to cry as she hears the news that her husband has just passed away. Her beloved husband has just passed away. And she looks to her womb, knowing that the father of this unborn child, this innocent, pure, unborn child, has just passed away. And this child would enter this world as an orphan, having never met his father. And we know that many of us, we complain about our life, saying in our life that we live, we go through so many trials. That when I was this many years old, I went through this trial. When I was this many years old, I went through this trial. But the Prophet ﷺ, he hasn't even entered into this world. His life hasn't even begun. And his sorrows and his trials starts to begin. That he has to enter this world saying goodbye to his father from the womb of his mother. He has to enter this world as an orphan, as a yatim. And the beautiful thing is that the rank of orphans that Allah chose, that His greatest of creation, His most beloved of creation, would enter this world as an orphan. And from the 99 names of the Prophet ﷺ, one of his beautiful names that he wore with honor is Al-Yatim, that he is the Yatim, the orphan Prophet. And that is an honor and a sharaf for every orphan in this world, that they are born into this world, or when they become an orphan, they have been given the title by Allah. That was a title that Allah gave to His beloved sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Yatim sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And now Hazrat Amina radiallahu anha has to go through not only the pain of her husband, but the pregnancy of this child that she's awaiting so eagerly, all alone on her own in her home without her beloved husband. And these are the 2 beloved parents of the Prophet ﷺ, one of whom have just passed away. And now the pregnancy starts to progress month after month. And Hazrat Abdul Muttalib, like we said, just as in the absence of Hazrat Abdullah, in the passing away of Hazrat Abdullah, Hazrat Abdul Muttalib took very great care of Hazrat Amina, like he was his own daughter. And he knew that this baby that would be born would be like his own son. That's how much love and care he took. He would regularly visit Hazrat Amina, and he would regularly visit the house of Hazrat Amina and make sure that all her needs are taken care of, month after month. And as month progressed, that year of 569 had finished, and we enter into the year of 570 BC. And as we enter into this year of 570 BC, in this very first month of Muharram, the year starts. And we have to remember that back then, this wasn't an age where you had smartphones and calendars and printed calendars, calendar apps on your phone. The dates that were remembered were not documented in the way we document them. They didn't have calendars, they didn't have precise dates to actually mark. Some people would, but majority of the people didn't know exactly what date it was. The way they would use it, they had many different names for the phases of the moon. So for every 2 to 3 days, the different phases of the moon, they had a different name for them. So by that name, when they would look at the moon, they would know we're roughly on 1st, 2nd, 3rd, or we're roughly on 4th, 5th, 6th. Like we have, for example, the Ayyam Bid, the white days, when the moon is at its fullest. It is sunnah to fast. The 11th, the 13th, 14th, 15th. We have these dates that we know the name of the moon is Badr, for example, when it's the most brightest. They would use these days as an approximation of what date they are in the month, or what phase they are in the month. And when it comes to years, what year they're in, some people would keep count, but overall, years were forgotten, years were not remembered. And the way they would remember years was by big events. So if a big event took place in a year, they would count, saying, okay, this took place 3 years after this great event took place. So in our time, if we remember, the year of COVID-19, it was 2020. 3 years down the line in 2023, if a great event takes place, we could say it was 3 years after the COVID-19 incident. So a big event, a memorable event, whether good or bad, if it was a big event of an epic proportion, that year was remembered by that event, and the time after was counted. So 3 months after that event, 4 months after that event, or a year after that event. And now we're talking about this year 570 BC, which is going to be the most important year in the history of mankind. The year when the Prophet ﷺ is going to be born. How can this year be forgotten? And now look, in order that this year is absolutely captivating, and that this year is always remembered by history, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala enables that this year is never forgotten. What happens is in this early month of Muharram, in this early beginning of this year, if we move out of our setting in Makkah and we go towards Yemen, there is a king by the name of Abraha. And Abraha, he orders, time doesn't allow us to go into the details, but he orders for a temple and a worship house under his name to be built, the likes of which no one in the world has seen. And he wanted his kingdom and his rule to shine over the world. He wanted his kingdom to be above. As we said, this was a time of power and glory and greed of power and riches. So in order to establish his kingdom and his dominion and increase it, he ordered, he used all his riches and all his wealth and all his influence and all his power to ensure that a palace and a type temple was built that would be like the world has never seen before. And he wanted that this would become, something that overtakes the Kaaba and becomes a center point that the whole world will come and visit. So he orders for this palace to be built, and it takes him months and years until eventually in this month of Muharram in the year 570 BC, his temple is built. And he invites all of the guests. He has this massive opening, this grand opening, if you will. And the doors are open, and all you can hear is the sound of crickets. Absolute silence. No one comes to visit this temple of his. And as the various incidents transpire, he becomes so angered by this that he calls all his advisors, his marketing team, and he's trying his best to see why is no one coming to the launch and the opening of my grand temple. Why is this not becoming the place everyone has to be? Until one of his advisors tells him that as long as the Kaaba remains, there's nowhere anyone is going to come to your temple. There is no possible way people will leave the Kaaba and come to your temple. The Kaaba is unmatched. There's no competition here. The Kaaba is in its league of its own. So this angers Abraha so much that he says, fine, if that's the case, then I have to demolish the competition. I have to get rid of the competition. We're going to go and destroy the Kaaba. Astaghfirullah. Na'udhu billah. This person was so blinded by his greed that he said, get the best of my men and the best of my armies and the best of my resources. We're going to go to march to Makkah and make sure, let it be a statement known. This is going to be our way of eliminating the competition and marketing our temple. Everyone must come to our temple. So now, as time is of the essence, he eventually he gets his army together and he says it's not just going to be horses and it's not just going to be soldiers. It's going to be giant elephants. Huge elephants, showing the magnanimity of his wealth and influence, showing the effect of his power. He takes these huge elephants and he starts to march towards Makkah al-Mukarramah. And as weeks and days transpire, eventually in this month of Muharram, he reaches towards the end of Muharram, he reaches towards the outskirts of Makkah. And you can imagine for the people of Makkah, as we said, it's just the Kaaba, the Darul Nadwa Council, the few houses. Some houses were slightly built up in stone and maybe a few floors. But otherwise it was slums and small houses in an overall open desert surrounded by mountains. And because of the nature of the time, you had people that would be guards of Makkah, that would surround the outskirts of Makkah and stand watch at all times. And in this open kind of desert land, the people of Makkah are suddenly seeing these huge elephants in the numbers coming, marching towards Makkah, creating a vibration. Even the people in their homes could hear that magnitude of elephants coming, crushing down on the ground, thumping, and that effect echoing through the city. Everyone starts to leave their homes, and as they reach towards the outskirts of Makkah, they see this massive army coming with these huge elephants marching towards Makkah, and they're unprepared. They've been taken by surprise. And at this moment, the effect of a leader that when people are in distress, they turn to their leader. Right now, we know that with the distress of COVID-19, everyone is more focused towards our leaders, towards our prime ministers, and there's more pressure on them more than ever. So at this moment of panic, everyone turns towards Abdul Muttalib, the leader of Makkah, saying, what are we going to do? What's going to happen? We're not prepared for something like this. And more than anything, they're worried about their homes, their livelihood, and the Kaaba, the sanctity of the city, the Haram. So now the leaders come together. They have a meeting in their Darul Nadwa council, saying, how are we going to, react to this? How are we going to counteract this? And whilst they're having a meeting, Abraha's army reaches towards the outskirts of Makkah and poses there and sets up a massive camp. Even for that temporary nature, they set up such a huge tent and such a glamorous, enriched and ornamented tent for Abraha to show the luster of his his kingship and his power and greed. And whilst this is set up, all of this is intimidating the people of Makkah that are frantically watching outside, thinking, what's going to happen to our city? And at this moment, Abdul Muttalib, all eyes on him, all pressure on him. But he was a leader. There was a reason Allah put him and accepted him and chose him to be the leader of Makkah. Abdul Muttalib stands up and he walks outside of the council alone, with just one person to go with him. Just one of his khadims, just one of his helpers, to assistants to come with him. He walks outside of Makkah and marches, with absolute faith and yaqeen in Allah, walking up to this tent that was built to intimidate and instill fear within anyone that comes inside. And the grandfather of the Prophet ﷺ walks towards this tent. He asks for permission to admit, and he enters inside this tent and he sits inside. And in this tent has been designed in such a way that Abraha sits high, tall and mighty, and intimidates all those beneath him. And all those gods surrounded with weapons, elephants waiting to pounce. And as Abdul Muttalib walks in on his own with no entourage, just one assistant, no gods, no one to protect him. He walks in and he sits down in front of Abraha. And Abraha is waiting for this moment. He could have easily gone in and just trampled Makkah and done what he wanted. But many a times the foolishness of evil people, many times many of these criminals, they like to monologue. They like to chat. They like to talk. As we see in many of these movies. Where do you think they got the idea from? Abraha, blinded by his evil and blinded by his influence, he wanted that one moment to gloat. He wanted that one moment to, explain his plan, his evil plan and plot, so he could see everyone in fear as he walks into Makkah. But that was his biggest mistake. That was his plot, his falling point. He waits and he sees Abdul Muttalib in front of him, waiting for Abdul Muttalib to kind of quiver in front of him. And he's waiting to see Abdul Muttalib beg. Instead, Abdul Muttalib starts off by saying to Abraha, after greeting him, he says, "O Abraha, I'm here to discuss with you in regards to a trade, in regards to a business deal that we had between ourselves and yourself." And at this moment, Abraha is completely bewildered. He's completely shocked, saying, "Huh?" His eyes are closed. He's smiling, saying, "Go on, let me hear it. Let me see you beg for mercy." And suddenly, he opens his eyes. "You're asking me about business?" And Abdul Muttalib says, "Yeah, we had that business deal. You owed us a certain amount of, return. I'm just gonna, kind of put it out there. I'm wondering where are we in terms of that business deal." And he just eloquently and calmly asks him, that what's the latest update in regards to the payment that you owed us, in regards to these camels that you owed us. And Abraha is shocked, and in his anger is thinking, how are you not intimidated by me? Look at everything I've done. How are you not scared? How are you not begging? So now he says it outrightly, saying, "Why are you asking me about the camels? I'm here to destroy your Kaaba. Aren't you going to ask me about that?" And then he waits, saying, "Now maybe I'm going to get the response." But look at the response of Abdul Muttalib. Abdul Muttalib says, "Why would I ask you in regards to the Kaaba? I'm asking you in regards to what I'm responsible for. That house that lies in Makkah, the Kaaba, that is the house of Allah. And He is the Rabb of that Bayt. He is the Lord of that house. He is the one who will protect that house. And there's nothing you can do in front of Allah. As for me, I'm entrusted with my camels. I am the Rabb of these camels. So I'm asking you in regards to the protection of what I am responsible for. As regards to the Kaaba, that's protected by Allah. I don't need to worry about that. It's in good hands." And the moment Abraha hears his response, he's so angry. He's so elated by this, in a form of anger, that he stands up, his rage gets the better of him, and he commands all of his army and all of his soldiers that get up right now. We're marching straight this moment and showing them what we're built of. And he marches out of his tent whilst Abdul Muttalib is watching. He gets on top of his conveyances and he leads his army, his soldiers, saying, march with all these elephants. And all of these elephants are now, as one by one, as they're being commanded by the ones who are leading them, these elephants, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 20, begin to march and thump on the ground. And the earth in Makkah starts to tremor. And those in Makkah, now if the scene switches, are thinking, oh no, Abdul Muttalib's failed. Now they have no idea of what has just transpired and how well he's just dealt with the situation as a true leader. And at this moment, they've lost trust in Abdul Muttalib. This moment, they've started to fear. They start to run towards the outskirts of the mountains. And many people were so scared that they just started to flee. And at this moment, Abraha starts to march with his army. And the elephants start to thump closer and closer and closer towards Makkah. Until eventually they reach towards entering into Makkah and coming towards the precincts of the Haram. And as they are marching, they come closer and closer, and Abraha starts to gloat and smile as he looks around, the people in fear, the people marching towards the mountain, and he starts to see the Kaaba. And as he comes towards this, his manzil, the epitome of his plan is coming towards him. His destination, his goal, his victory, if you will, is coming closer towards him, and he's gloating as he gets closer and closer towards the Kaaba until, boom, he falls to the ground. And he turns around and he sees that all of the elephants have just stopped. And the effect of that has caused him to fall. He turns around, he looks towards the elephants, and in his anger, in this moment of embarrassment, this kind of cut that's just broke his floor, he gets back up and he screams at his soldiers, saying, instruct the elephants again. And all of these people are whipping the elephants, they hitting the elephants and trying to get them to move forward. But by the command of Allah, those creatures and those beings that move at the command of not those soldiers, not those instructors, but at the command of their Lord and the command of their Creator, they halted and they stopped out of reverence of the Kaaba. They got close enough to see the Kaaba, but they stopped there and they wouldn't move an inch forward. And this army of Abraha is getting impatient now. He's looking towards the people who are surrounding the mountains of Makkah, this massive audience. Makkah became like a coliseum. It became like a massive arena. You've got the elephants, the army of Abraha, the Kaaba on its own, with no one to protect it. Abdul Muttalib on the outskirts, coming in towards Makkah, and this massive, epic audience surrounding the mountains of Makkah, all the way around, looking through this scene, and they're all looking at each other. The crowd is kind of silent, if you will, saying, "What's just happened?" And all you can see is Abraha struggling with his army, saying, "Why aren't these elephants moving?" Until he eventually realizes that these elephants have actually denied them. They throw off the people that are on them. And the elephants are showing their power to Abraha's army now. And now through this frustration, what happens? Abraha gets his army to come off the elephants, pull out their swords, and saying, if the elephants won't do the job, we'll do the job. And this massive, momentous army of Abraha is about to destroy Makkah, saying, if I can't reach my goal, I'll destroy every last shred of Makkah. And as he lifts his spears and swords, and as he's screaming, his evil chants and riling up his army, all of a sudden, there's a silence that breaks through. The cries of his army and the screams of Abraha start to silence when they hear a sort of distant sound, but at the same time a distant echoing and thudding, not very different to the way that the Makkans were hearing the echoes and the tremors of the elephants entering in. Abraha starts to hear this, and the people of Makkah, they're hearing this again, saying, didn't we just hear the elephants coming, echoing in? What's this distant sound now? Is this a bigger army? What's going on? And they're turning around, looking left and right, until they're seeing that from all directions of Makkah, they see these tiny, tiny little kind of dots coming in, and the vibrations of them moving in towards Makkah from every direction is creating this atmosphere. And this suspense is starting to build up. Even Abraha is starting to look around, saying, what is this? It is a bird. Is it a bird? Is it a plane? What is it? And at this moment, they see these tiny, tiny small birds known as ababil, tayran ababil, that are coming closer and closer, but in the hundreds and the thousands, coming closer and closer from all around Makkah, centering in on Makkah. And the vibration and the sound, the effect of them coming in is creating such an atmosphere in Makkah that even Abraha is starting to tremble now, saying, what's going on? Even this massive army, this army that's supposed to instill fear, is now in suspense, in a worry, saying, what's going on? What is this? This scene is something we've never seen before. And these birds start to come closer and closer and closer and closer until they encircle the whole of Mecca, and they come right above the army of Abraha. And within these birds, they're holding small, tiny pebbles. Small birds with tiny pebbles. And they start to slowly unleash these pebbles right upon the army of Abraha. And these pebbles are going down and down and down. And to Abraha's surprise and shock, his massive army, his massive elephants are looking down at these tiny birds with these tiny pebbles and thinking, what is this? And all of a sudden, as those pebbles come down towards them, boom, this massive army and this massive, elephants are being trampled and being destroyed. Every one of these soldiers is being destroyed and diminished by these tiny pebbles and these tiny birds that are hovering over them, going round and coming, in countless numbers and throwing, hundreds and thousands of pebbles until the entire army of Abraha is destroyed. And the entire scene, the entire audience around Mecca is watching this epic scene where all they can see is a rain shower of pebbles from these, the birds that have covered the sky. The sky has been covered by birds. The stones are throwing, down like a hailstorm, like a thunderstorm, until eventually the stones that are coming down in the thousands and hundreds, all they can see is stones and birds that are eventually subsiding. And as the stones subside and the birds subside, the clouds foam through, and all they can see is this beautiful city of Mecca that is the Kaaba, and all of this entire army down on the ground, destroyed to the shreds in the dust of the sand. And all of the Meccans are looking towards one another thinking, what just happened? Rewind forward just a few seconds ago, we were surrounded by elephants, huge elephants, about to think what's going to happen to the Kaaba. They're marching on, and the elephants stopped. And then they took out their swords and thinking, we're all about to die. They're about to ravish us. And all of a sudden, as we closed our eyes, we open and here they are on the ground, covered in blood and absolutely destroyed. The greatest of armies, the most richest and influential people, destroyed in a matter of seconds. And these birds are now going. We don't know where they came from. We don't know where they're going to. And we don't know where they got this many pebbles from. This miracle that occurred is known as the incident of the elephant, or the incident of Feel. The famous surah that we know, أَلَمْ تَرَ كَيْفَ فَعَلَ رَبُّكَ بِأَصْحَابِ الْفِيلِ. Have you not seen how your Lord dealt with the people of the elephant? That short, beautiful surah is referring to this incident. This momentous incident that took place with the army of Abraha. This massive army that came to destroy the people of Mecca. And this huge elephants that was supposed to level the Kaaba have been destroyed by what? Small birds, tiny birds and tiny pebbles. And that is the power of Allah. Abraha thought that his height, his might, his power, the hugeness, the vast scale of his army, the numbers that he had, the weapons that he had, the riches that he had, the physical appearance that he had that was built to intimidate, the armor that he had, and the massive scale of the elephants was supposed to destroy the Kaaba. But Allah's answer, Allah showed His power, saying, to all of that pomp, to all of that glory, to all of that massive elephants, I just need the tiniest of pebbles and the tiniest of birds, and I can destroy you, whoever you are, no matter how high you are. And that is a ma'mul and a way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has time and time again in history, as the Quran showed us, the likes of Nimrud and Qarun and all these people who thought that the greatness and the vastness of the world was their power. Allah destroyed them with the smallest of forms. We know that in the Quran how many of these people were destroyed by a small creature came and ate up their brains, and Allah destroyed them, and all of their power and riches, nothing could help them. And subhanAllah, at this time, Mufti Ikram al-Aqsab, the Imam of Jamia Masjid, mentioned a beautiful nukta, a beautiful point, that even now in this world, we see that we have the superpowers of the world. We see the richest of people, the most influential of people, the most powerful of people. And right now, in this post-COVID world, in this current lockdown state, what are we seeing? The biggest and the greatest of people, the most influential of people, the superpowers of the world are brought to their knees by what? Something that's microscopic. A cell of COVID-19 that we can't even see with an eye. That is the power and qudra of Allah. And with that same power, Allah destroyed the entire army of Abraha, and with all of those elephants, and protected his haram, his Kaaba, the sanctified house in Masjid al-Haram. And this incident takes place in the beginning of this year 570 BC. And such an incident is something that will never be forgotten, not just in that year, but in years to come. And as such, this year became known as the year of the elephant. And normally, like we said, this is just the first month of the year. You have 12 months in the year. When we come to the end of our years, we have our YouTube rewinds and our countdown to the 2 a.m. Fireworks. But when we come to the moment of the year is remembered by the biggest incident that took place. And most often than not, an incident that took place in the earlier part of the year isn't going to be the one that is remembered, because there's still so many months. If something happens in January or in Muharram, there's still 11 months to go by, and no doubt something bigger could happen. But this incident takes place in the beginning of the year, and they already know nothing can beat this incident. So we're going to name the year at the beginning of the year rather than the end of the year. This year is known as Amul Fil, the year of the elephant. And why? How could the year of the birth of the beloved ever be forgotten? Allah marked the importance of this year and the memory of this year never to be forgotten from the very beginning and from the very onset of that year. That was the beautiful way that Allah marked the memory of His beloved sallallahu alaihi wasallam in this year 570 BC, when this incident of the elephant had taken place. With that, inshallah, I know time is of the essence. We have slightly gone over, and we apologize for the delay in starting the show today. We will, inshallah, pause at this moment to find out what happens next. Join us tomorrow, inshallah, hopefully at 4 o'clock, inshallah, as we continue the seerah of the beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Jazakallahu khairan. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.